For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's third practice of its 2021 fall camp. And Shotgun, we saw shoulder pads today, which means we heard some thumping. We saw some more action today, but overall I feel like it was a mixed day, pretty even for both the defense and the offense. What were your overall thoughts from today?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. We saw some really nice plays on both sides of the ball. We saw a few interceptions from the defense, but we also saw some deep balls from the offense, being able to connect Keaton Slovis with Drake Jackson and Taj Washington. On the run game, I thought the run game looked pretty good today. There were some nice runs getting outside a couple times. Keenan Christen had a big run up the middle for a touchdown late in the practice, but I also thought the defensive line was able to get in the backfield and make some tackles for loss as well. So pretty back and forth day, pretty even from both sides, and I think that's what, a positive thing for the team right now going, into the first padded practice and until they get the full pads on. We hear the sweet, sweet music of full pad practice where there's grunts, groans, and we don't hear stay up all the time.
True, very true. And I was standing next to you in practice, and you kept mentioning Taj Washington. That was a guy who stood out to you. What have you kind of seen from the new receivers in this group?
Well, first off, my favorite thing that I saw today from the receivers was seeing Joseph Manjack, Mike Jack, and John Jack's son all lined up together on the formation together at the same time, which is really fun. We'll see. Unfortunately, Drake Jackson was not on the defensive side. He was not at practice again today. But from the receivers, I think you're seeing there's different weapons. You're seeing guys moving inside and outside. You'll see Kyle Ford one time inside. You'll see him outside the next time. We noted that, seeing Malcolm Epps and his 6'6" frame as an inside receiver being used split out as a tight end. And then beside him, you have Taj Washington and under 6 foot on the outside. Normally it's the other way around. You have that shifty slot receiver. Instead, his speed, he can be used on the outside. You're seeing guys inside and outside. So I think that you're seeing different weapons, and the offense is trying to figure out exactly what weapons they have and how those can be utilized together. Taj Washington, the big thing, we didn't necessarily see it in the spring, was the deep ball and, being able to get behind the defense, and the fact that Keaton Slovis, and seeing him in pads, that gives you a little bit better representation of a quarterback, and seeing him be able to get the ball out there to Taj Washington, get the ball out there to Drake London, looks more and more like 2019 Keaton Slovis as far as the arm strength than we saw last year with the inconsistency.
Mm-hmm. We're still seeing rotation on the offensive line, but today we saw something a little different. It was like a mixing and matching of first team and second team at the same time. What did we see? Yeah,
first we went back to the first day of camp and what we saw in the spring as far as the first team with Cortland Ford at left tackle. But then later in practice we saw some first team left with second team right, and then kind of vice versa the next drive. So kind of mixing and matching. It tells me that you're moving around guys to kind of get that feel. Where's everyone at? But who works well together? And one of the things I noted was that the left side guys were staying together and the right side. So you're seeing those couples kind of stay together. Liam Jimmons, Jalen McKenzie, seeing Cortland Ford working with Andrew Voorhees, and then, kind of mixing and matching from there. I think they're trying to feel out how well those couples work together, and then decide which two couples from which side work best with Brett Nealon in the middle of the line to be your full starting lineup. So I think you're seeing the mixing and matching. Clay McGuire again getting a feel of the offensive line and where they're at now that they've come back from fall camp and an off season with Bobby Steiner and the boys, which hearing from the defensive staff, they are all very highly appreciative of the way the players have come back in the shape that they're in right now.
Mm-hmm. I talked to Vic So'oto today. He was a very hot commodity. He was the last one to come off the field, and that's because he was working with Corey Foreman, and everyone wanted to ask about Corey. How is he doing as a fall enrollee? And both Todd Orlando and Vic So'oto said that he's a little bit behind the spring enrollees, but that's expected for any freshman who comes in the fall. But what have you seen so far from what he's been able to do in just 3 practices?
Well, we've seen Corey Foreman be able to get into the backfield in the one-on-ones. We've also seen he had a welcome to college rook type of moment today where a couple of offensive linemen got him pulling from the opposite side and put him on his butt a couple of plays in a team run period and the full team period. So, I think that's one of the areas where you got to be a little bit concerned about him coming in. That's the same thing with any true pass rusher off the edge. How are they going to be able to handle the run? And how well he does that will tell you how much playing time you can give him early in the season. As he continues to progress in that area, will make him the complete player that you can have out there for all 3 downs and a guy that you want on the field at all times because of his elite athleticism and his ability to make plays, which we've seen when he's coming off the edge, being able to get around the offensive lineman to get to the quarterback so far.
Mm-hmm. And Vic was asked about, hey, are there too many expectations on Corey right now? And he said, well, no one's has more expectations than us. And and by us he meant Vic and Corey. And so he said that he knows how to push him, make sure that he's at the highest competitive level that he can be at. So what have you seen in that sense as far as what he could be?
Well, I think one of the really good signs for Corey is because he's behind those early enrollees, he didn't get that semester that those guys got, that 15 practices in the spring, was seeing him be the last guy from his position group off the field. That's why Vic Soto was one of the last guys that we got to talk to today, because he was doing some extra work with Corey, and seeing him put in that extra work is really important. We'll see how quickly he can progress in all facets of his game, because we know he'll be able to get to the quarterback. That's going to be his strength. Can he do all the other things they're asking him? When they need him to drop into coverage or when they need him to play the run, can he do all those aspects?
Mm-hmm. And given the losses of Marlon Tuipulotu and now Jay Toya, Vic Soto was also asked about the interior defensive line. How do you make up for the bodies that USC just doesn't have anymore in its depth chart? And he said, they're still trying to figure out in fall camp. And we've seen that. We've seen some rotation. What have we seen as far as personnel and those matchings?
Well, you talked about how, we mentioned Bobby Steiner, but that was something that Vic Soto brought up, is how much those guys' bodies have improved to be able to play a nose tackle position if they need them to. So a Jamar Sakona, Kobe Pepe, those type guys putting on some weight. Nick Figueroa, I think you said, put on 30 pounds.
Yeah, almost 30 pounds.
So that's, those guys, if you can play them inside and outside, that makes you even more dangerous as a defensive line, because you can mix and match things a little bit more. Those young guys, they're going to have to step up. They're going to have to step forward, because Ishmael Sopsher is a guy there's still question marks about. Unfortunately, we did see him on Friday. He was able to participate in some of the one-on-one drills. Unfortunately, he took a little bit of a step back, it seems like. He did not participate today. He was in flats. He just watched all the drills. So how quickly can he come along? Vic Soto was asked about it, and he said, yeah, we hope to have him back and be ready for the first game, but we'll see exactly where he's at and how quickly he can progress. Otherwise, it's going to be on Sakona, Dejon Benton, and those type guys to take a big step forward, because there's not a lot of experience between that group.
Mm-hmm. One of the more notable things to come out of our media availability today was talking to Todd Orlando in that inside linebacker position. We've seen so far the first 3 days of camp, both Raylan Goforth and Kanai Malga, we saw them in 2020, but Raymond Scott has been getting more looks at that inside linebacker position, and Orlando basically confirmed it's a three-man race now. They're trying to see who fits best where. What have you seen from those three guys?
Well, I think it's interesting, because that's one of the positions we wanted to watch. But it was because we wanted to see, okay, where does Jordan Iosefa, where does Solomon Tulialapupu, the guys some veteran guys that have been injured, where are they? Can they get in the mix? And instead, Raymond Scott has pushed himself forward, and it's great to see, because that's a guy who every time he's been in the game, you see him making plays. He's not your prototypical size, height, weight, all that type of stuff, but he's just a playmaker. And I think that he saw an opportunity with Raylan Goforth and Kanai Malga to say, I think I can step up and be in that mix. And he put, we heard that he put in a lot of work this offseason, and the work that he's done this summer has given him that chance. Now we'll see if he can, push those guys and work his way into that starting lineup, or if those other two guys. And this is what you want. You want competition. You want guys to be feeling some pressure from someone behind them and feel like they got to step their game up. So we'll see if those two other guys, that played last year, if they can move their game forward as well.
Mm-hmm. And Raymond Scott is another guy where I think Robert Steiner had his hand on him a little bit and helped in that sense. But I talked to coaches, you talked to players, you got to talk to Chris Steele and Chase Williams. What they have to say today?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because those are now veteran guys. They're used to being the younger guy in the room. Now there's no one older than those guys. Isaiah Polamau is the only one, but he's, him, Chase Williams, and Greg Johnson are the three veterans in a safety room that has a ton of players with a ton of inexperience outside those three guys. Yeah. A lot of young guys in there, and they're teaching them up, and that's a big thing. We talked a little bit about Isaiah Polamau has been, helping out with some of the younger guys. Chase Williams doing the same thing. We talked about him being a vocal leader in the off season, or in the spring, and he's taking that step forward as well. They understand the defense a little bit better in the second year, and I think you're seeing that from the older guys, that they understand where they're supposed to be, but also where everyone around them is supposed to be. And that's the sign of really experienced players, is to be able to not only know their position, be able to help the guy out beside you, especially as a safety, helping out everyone in front of you. I think Chase Williams is definitely taking a step forward there. But both the guys I thought was interesting. Talked about some of the younger guys, and Kalen Bullock's name came up as a guy. He's a versatile guy. He's played some cornerbacks, played some nickel, played some safety. He's moving around a little bit. Both of them talked about him being a versatile player that could potentially get some playing time this season. And then talking to Chris Steele, one of the things I think fans on the P especially will be excited to hear is he talked about how he's worked this offseason on really moving his feet a little bit better because he feels like he's in position. He's been in great position in the past to not get some of those ticky-tack holding penalties with his hands and to be able to turned some of those plays where they're pass breakups into INTs. So he's been working with Drake London, working on his hand positioning when the ball gets there, just his ball skills and stuff like that. So both those guys, talked about their growth as, players off the field as well as on the field and becoming leaders and how that's helping them grow as players on the field as well.
Mm-hmm. USC is still going through the acclimation period, so they will return in shoulder pads tomorrow. As far as media goes, we'll be able to talk to special teams and some newcomers. I'm not sure who the newcomers will be, but we're excited to talk to them regardless. But Chuck, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
I think it was a pretty even day, like we said. We saw some really nice plays on both sides of the ball. I want to highlight one of those plays, Isaiah Polamau. We talked about his leadership in that safety room, but making plays too. On one, we saw Jackson Dark hesitate a little bit on a crossing route, a deep crossing route. Isaiah Polamau comes off of his coverage area and goes and makes a play, very veteran move there. But then a few plays later, we saw him on the sideline talking with Kalen Bullock after a play and, going over exactly where he needs to be. So we're seeing both the playmaking ability and we're seeing the leadership there. So really nice play there. I thought Miller Moss showed some really nice pocket movement a couple times to avoid some pressures there. I think his confidence is only growing from the offseason, beyond in the spring, finally getting some reps after that year and a half off. And then Keaton Slovis, talked a little bit about it, but, the arm strength seems to be there. He's made a couple nice deep ball throws, and it seems like his confidence is there. So I think from the quarterback group, I think you're seeing them compete a little bit better. And, I talked about a little bit about Taj Washington, really like that kid. I think he's going to have a big impact too. So the running backs, do want to point out Brandon Campbell is a guy we haven't really talked about being in the mix for 1 and 1A. But I feel like you got to get that guy the ball somehow, because every time he gets the ball, he makes some special things happen. So we'll see if he continues, if he can do all the other things they're going to be asking for him. But he continues to have some nice runs during practice as well.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's third practice of its 2021 fall camp. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.